Hi, my name's Kathy Bradick, and I'm the founder of the Turban Project. The Turban Project provides free headwear for people, men, women, and children who have lost their hair due to medical reasons. It could be chemotherapy, alopecia, surgery, nerves, fire. There's so many causes, and we're there to make a difference. Everything's free, and our goal is to reach those people before they spend money they don't have to spend. We even pay shipping. So today, I'm going to show you a new turban that we're making. It's called the Cuffed Turban, and it's 2 pieces of fabric. This is the head part, and this is the band. The easier, the better. So what we're going to start with is putting the right sides together of this fabric, and then you want to sew a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So we're going to put the curved part on the bottom, and I'm going to start sewing right here. Now with knit fabric, I always push it past the beginning where the needle hits because it tends to go down inside. And we can catch that later when we do our hem. Okay, so I'm just going to run the 3/8 inch seam from the bottom all the way up to the top, but we're not going to seal it. At the very top, we're going to leave an opening about 1/2 inch long. And this is a very forgiving pattern. I know some seamstresses are very precise, but I try to make things as easy as possible, and they look as good. Okay, we're almost there. Okay, now I'm at about 1/2 inch from the top, so I'm backing up my stitching so that it will, I can cut it and pull it out of there, and it won't fray. It won't come apart. So there, now we have it sewn together, and now we're going to do the hem, and that's one of the only things that I pin. As you noticed, I didn't use pins on the other. So I'm going to measure this, and it's going to be 2 1/2 inches. Be patient with me as I try not to pin through the whole thing. We make special orders for people. If you have a favorite thing, maybe you love horses, maybe you're a photographer, maybe you love basketball or soccer, or Snoopy. We can customize things just for you because what we want to do is make you feel good. And while we sew these, we think of the person that's going to be wearing them and say a prayer for them. Okay, almost there. Now on the hem, we're going to do a zigzag stitch. And we do a wider zigzag. And the reason we do a zigzag stitch is so it will stretch. When you put it on your head or the patient puts it on their head, the threads may break if you don't have a zigzag stitch. So here we go. And I'm sewing right over that little spot that I didn't sew when I started the first stitching, so it wouldn't go down in the machine. So I'm going to switch it to zigzag, make it a little wider. Okay, let's see what we got. Okay, that's great. Now what I'm doing is I am actually doing the zigzag, one on the fold of the fabric and one off. So it's going to make that lay completely flat. I use just a tiny bit of resistance when it's going through, so I put my hand on the fabric here. I don't push down very hard, just a little, off and on, so that we know it's going to stretch good. It's all about not breaking the threads when they put it on and being comfortable. So all you need on anything that we make is either a straight stitch or a zigzag stitch. You don't have to have a fancy machine that does a bunch of stuff that you have to learn how to use it. This is an easy, simple pattern. So always, always, I preach, trim your threads, because if someone doesn't have hair and their head's sensitive, those threads are going to irritate them. Okay, so here's what we've got so far, and as you see, there's a hole where my finger is. That's where we're going to push the band through. So the next step is the band, and always you fold right sides together. And remember, I said if it's knit, someone may have a trick to it, but this is what I do. So it doesn't go push down in the hole. I start it away from the end of the fabric by about a ½ an inch to an inch. Now I'm going to go back to straight stitch. Always back it up a little so it won't fray. We're just going to sew right down the side. Now this band is quite a bit longer than it needs to be, but that's just so that you can work with it. I'm going to turn it right side out. So eventually I'll be cutting off maybe 2 inches or more of this. So you make it so the seam is, that's going to be the back side of the band, and there's the front side, okay? So we're going to take this turban hat, and before we put the band on, we're going to pin the cuff, actually tack it with the sewing machine. Now you can hand tack this if you want, but if you tack it with your sewing machine, all you have to do is put your feed dogs down, which is what I just did, and every machine's different, and do a zigzag. So I'm putting it on zigzag, and it'll stay in place and just tack it. And like I said, if some people like doing theirs by hand. So when I'm tacking the back, this is going to be the back of the turban. You see the seam? So when I flipped up the cuff, I'm having the seam on the cuff exactly matching the seam on the back of the turban. That way you know it's not going to be twisted. And then I try to tack right at that seam. And it's just a small tack. And you can see how it's zigzagging, but it's not going anywhere. That's your tack. And we can unpin that, trim the threads. So that's the back seam. And you see the cuff. Now, to make sure, and I've seen this go wrong, I've had it go wrong myself. If you don't make sure that you tack the front exactly the half mark, your seam on the back will end up being twisted up the head. So you've got to make sure. What I do is I take my finger and put it in right where I made that first tack, and then I straighten it like this, and where this finger is going to be the center of the front. And I'm going to mark it with a pin, and I'm going to tack it. And that's the only 2 tacks on the cuff that we do. So I'm going to tack this one real quick. And trim my threads. We get a lot of compliments from patients who say they've tried so many different companies, and we're not a company, we're a ministry. And the headwear isn't as soft, and we go out of our way to get the softest fabric so that it doesn't irritate the head. So now we have the front tacked and the back tacked, and the cuff is turned up. Now I'm going to put the band through the hole. Some people, after they get the band on, they like to sew the hole shut. If you make the hole small enough, you don't have to. So what I'm going to do now is sew the band together. So I kind of flip it so that it's right sides of the band together. And have your little seam in the middle. So you can see the seam right here. Right sides together. And I'm going to stitch this. Now I know that I take off at least, well, let's just measure it. I'm going to take off 2 inches. We got to take it off the feed dogs down, break them up, put it on straight stitch. Here we go. And then I turn it around and run it across it one more time. And I'm going to cut that off very close to the stitching. With this being a interlock knit, it won't fray, so we don't need this extra fabric in there making it bulky. And now I'm going to flip my band back around so the right sides are showing without the seam. So here we go again. We got to make sure this band is in the middle of the front. So you're going to go to where you have it tacked in the front. And you know that's the middle of the front. So I always bring my the seam on the band through the hole so it's up at the top by the hole. It lays flat and it shouldn't make any difference, but just in case, we'll be extra careful. Okay, so I've got my band on and it's sewn. I want to tack my band to the cuffed turban, so the cuff, so it doesn't move back and forth or sideways. Put my feed dogs down, put it on zigzag. Work this under. You might have to move your band a little bit. Make sure it's flat on the bottom. So when you're tacking it, it's not curled up. And sometimes it'll curl on you and you don't know it till after you've sewn it. So we'll double check that. Slide it under the presser foot. I got to move the top of the band over. And I'm putting it right where the tack is that we made on the cuff. And I'm going to tack it right now. Pull out my pin, trim my threads. And you can see on the back of the turban where we tacked it. And on the front, you don't see anything. You don't see the hem. You don't see the tacks. And right now, we have a completed cuffed turban. Thank you so much. If you have any questions at all, you can contact me through our website turbanproject.com, and I'll get back with you as quickly as I can. Thank you so much.